So I've spent the past few weeks diagnosing issues with and repairing another computer from the lot that Louie gave me. This computer is not a Commodore 64. It is the Commodore 128. Now, it didn't always look this bright and shiny. And today, I'm going to take you through the steps that I took to get the computer from what it looked like to what it is now. So without further ado, here is my repair process for the Commodore 128. Now, this Commodore 128 had an issue that was different from the previous issues I've experienced with the Commodore 64s. This machine had zero power. The power brick was what I thought good initially, and the device itself just would not power on. So I go through the steps of diagnosing an issue with the power supply, fixing that, and then going on to fix the Commodore 128. So if you guys have any questions during the video, just drop them in the comments down below. I do try to answer all of your questions. And if any of you have broken Commodore 64s, 128s, handy computers, or anything like that that you'd like me to work on, let me know in the comments down below or email me at bryant@reviewsfornerds.com. I would love any donations to the channel, or I would love to talk to you about some of the projects you've been working on. So without further ado, let's get into my repair process for the Commodore 128. Now, learning lessons from the Commodore 64 repair, I knew the first step in diagnosing issues would be to test the power supply. Now, the pinout for this power supply is a lot different than the pinout for the Commodore 64. Knowing that pinout, I'm testing both AC and DC power. And what I'm noticing, I'm not getting the correct power on one side. So this means it's time to crack open the Commodore 128 power supply. And here you can see I've already loosened the screws. There are 4 screws hidden behind plastic feet. Lifting the power supply, we can see both the AC and the DC power, AC being on the left and DC on the right. Now, what I'm going to be looking for here is I'm going to check continuity between the fuses because there's an AC and a DC fuse, something that Commodore 64 power supply didn't have. And what I found is the DC voltage fuse was blown. So this is me replacing the fuse, and then I'm going to check for continuity. It's a little hard to tell, but I am getting continuity now where I wasn't before. Now I'm plugging the power supply in. So what I'm going to do is test AC and DC again. And here you can see we're getting correct voltages. So now it's time for the moment of truth. I wanted to power on the Commodore 128 to make sure the power supply was feeding power to the machine. Checking to make sure the cables are in place. Checking the channel selector. Moving the power switch up and down. But no luck. No power. No power light. No indication the machine is even on. So knowing that the issue is not the power supply, my next step is to crack the machine open. Now, when I go about cleaning one of these Commodores, I like to start from the outside and then work my way in, mainly because most of the time the outside's pretty gross, and I know that I'm going to have to eventually do it anyway. So I'm going to start by pulling the keys off the keyboard, and that'll tell me if there's any rust behind the keys or on the springs or anything like that. and see if I have any underlying damage. So now that I'm down to the last 3 keys on the keyboard, I'm running into a problem. So the last 3 keys are the 2 enter keys and the space bar, all of which have a metal hinge on the bottom of them that connect down onto the surface of the keyboard. And it's to give them a little bit more stability because they are bigger keys. I was not paying attention to what I was doing. And as you can see here, I broke the tabs on at least 2 of those keys. I will end up going through a process to fix them a little bit later in the video, but just know that I will be keeping this computer and I will not be trying to sell this at all. It's going to be mine. I can deal with any kind of weirdness with the keyboard. So now it's time to crack open the Commodore 128 and see what's inside. Now, the video you're about to see, first of all, has some really horrible audio, and I'm sorry. I was trying out a new wireless lav mic, and it picks up literally everything out here in this garage. But this is going to step you through what goes on in my mind when I'm going to work on a piece of equipment like this. We'll start with a brief overview of the device, and so you can see like how dirty and how like yellowed the plastics are. And I'll go through the process of what I'm planning on doing for the retro writing.
All right, so this is the Commodore 128 that Louie was kind enough to donate to the channel. Now, this computer has been sitting for probably 30 years, give or take. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of sun damage to both the case and the keyboard. I have taken the leftmost keys here. As you can see here, they're much lighter than the other keys. Let's get a little closer there so you can see. So they're much lighter than the other keys here. When I started out, they were all the exact same color. Now, I tested some different methods of retro brighting. This I used vinegar. These 2 were in a mixture of just over-the-counter hydrogen peroxide. And then this one was actually in lime juice. I left them in a tank under a black light for 24 hours. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all of these keys off. I'm going to put them in a bag, and I'm going to fill the bag with this. 12% hydrogen peroxide. Now, if you're using this, I'm going to mix a little water in there too so that it's not pure hydrogen peroxide. If you're using this, though, you need to be sure to take proper precautions. Wear gloves and wear eye protection. I will put all of these keys in the solution, and I will let it sit for 24 hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just enough of this 12% hydrogen peroxide in here. Just enough to cover the keys. Also make sure that if you are going to do this, not to do this on anything that you want to keep looking nice. This rug is really old. Anyway, just enough of that. Then we're going to put some water in it, and I'll be right back. All right, I've got a a solution of water. And now we're going to take this giant tub, which is mirrored all around. I am going to place the keys in thusly, close the lid, power it on, and we'll check it tomorrow.
So while the keys are in the process of being retrobrighted, I wanted to crack open the case and get inside the Commodore 128 to see what was going on. To do that, I first wanted to clean some of the outside as I was working my way in.
Well, I can't find my trusty toothbrush, so I'm just going to dry brush it with this old paintbrush here. I'm just trying to knock the dirt off of this keyboard. As it is really nasty. I mean, this computer is almost as old as I am. I think the date code on it puts it right about the summer after my kindergarten year of school. So you can forgive it for being just a little on the dirty side. Alright, without any more dismantling, I believe that's about as good as we're going to get. So now, just like with our Commodore 64, we have 3 screws. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This one has 3 up front, 2 in the back, and 1 in the middle, so 6 screws. I think what I'm going to do is try to retro bright the top, but I may just try to clean the bottom with some good soap and water. Maybe try this vinegar approach. I tried that with some of those keycaps there, and I'll find that screw that fell down there later. And then the 128 has tabs all along the side here, plastic spludgers and guitar pick type things here. Just running them inside the 128 to pop it apart. That was a little easier than I thought it was going to be. Then we lift up carefully because we have our LED here. We'll take that off. I'm going to have to get a bigger table to work on here. And then our keyboard connector. There we go. And now, unlike the Commodore 64, the 128, its keyboard is grounded right here. So we have to undo this screw. And that is our keyboard assembly. You notice all the keys that I pulled off earlier that had the different keycap on it are all 3 of them soldered in very similarly to the C64's shift lock. So to pull the rest of the keyboard out, then I believe from there, the keyboard will lift out. And as you can see, there's still more dirt. I will be thoroughly cleaning this entire keyboard. And then we have our LED. Oh, which just pops out like that. And there's a little piece that was holding it together there. Much easier to do than 64, for sure. Now, as you can see, this is our original color. This is the color that the top has become. This is the color that the bottom has become. Since most of the bottom is pretty decent looking aside from the sides, I'm going to try to just clean it without doing anything retrobrighting. The top will, obviously, I'll give it an attempt at retrobrighting, and if that fails, then I may end up just cleaning it. Now, looking at this, it is a gross mess. So, I could try to plug it into power, but I already know that as of right now, the power supply is not going to work. So what I want to do is just start the process of cleaning, and I'm going to slowly pull the rest of the 128 apart, cleaning it. It looks like something down here, something liquid has gotten into it at some point, but who knows. But I'm just going to try to knock as much of the dirt off of everything as possible. And then find our screws. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws, I believe. 7 holding this RF shield / heatsink off. You see, unlike the 64, the 128, all of the chips have a part of this heatsink touching them, and I can only assume that there's thermal paste in there. So there'll be a lot of cleaning of that. But fortunately, at least for the top part of this board, we're not having to desolder anything. This is exciting. I've never seen the inside of a 128 before. Let's lift. And just as I thought, everything has a little bit of thermal paste on it. I will be giving this a thorough clean. And of course, reapplying thermal paste. Now, getting into the board and looking around the board, I don't see anything that looks damaged. I do see, as you can hopefully tell by just me brushing here, that the board is, just like the outside of the computer, very dusty. So I'm going to just dust it off. Now, I'm not sure what U36 is, but I just noticed that there's no chip in U36. So if that is necessary for it to be in place, that might be our whole problem. So I'm going to do a little bit of research after I finish cleaning this up, and we'll see what's going on. Well, after all that excitement, apparently U36 on the Commodore 128 is nothing more than an empty board, or empty slot for expansion. So I'm looking, and it appears that that was all it took to pull the entire board out. Now looking again at the bottom of the case, I will be giving the bottom a good scrub too before taking it and attempting to retrobrite it. But unlike the C64s, this 128 seems to be really sturdy and in good shape. So the bottom I'm going to test clean, and I've got some lavender scented industrial strength vinegar, and I'm going to try that after scrubbing this off and see what it does. So here's your before. There's a good indication of what the case color should look like versus what it is looking like here. Now that we've gotten everything off, here's our heat shield, which, again, unlike the 64, this heat shield just has these little tabs that can be bent out of the way, which, if I'm being quite honest, comparatively is a blessing. I think most of the people that you see on YouTube just end up taking the bottom shield off on theirs. I'm not quite sure I would want to do that on my Commodore 64, but we'll see. So we're just going to go around and bend all of these little tabs. And then I can check the bottom of the board for any kind of issues. I'm kind of going into this blind. I don't even know that I've seen very many Commodore 128 videos. I'm sure Adrian over at Adrian's Digital Basement and Retro Repair Guy and 8-Bit Guy and all them, I'm sure they've got videos on the 128, but I've been so hyper-focused on the 64s so that I could get that one out for my father-in-law, who, by the way, is thoroughly enjoying his Commodore 64. But anyway, I've been hyper-focused on that for so long that I didn't get a chance to watch very many videos about the 128. All right. I don't know what's going on here, but there is some sort of jumper situation going between this 8502 and this bit of memory here, I think. So maybe I'll look that up. There's our power switch. Nothing seems terribly off. It all looks like it could be factory, except for this wire here. I don't know if that's factory or not, but we'll see. But yeah, now it's time to check voltages. So interestingly, this is, like I said, expansion ROM, and apparently you can put all kinds of stuff in there. I do have a Jiffy DOS disk that Louie gave to me, along with a plethora of other things. So maybe we'll be able to test out Jiffy DOS on here. I would assume that this is our... I know that's a VIC-2. I think this might have dual VIC-2s because of the 64 and 128 mode, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. But again, everything appears to be fine there. This thing is an unwielding beast. This is a very similar looking power supply to the Amiga power supply. However, it is not the same power supply. At least that's what I've been told. So now I am just hooking up to my TV here. I'm going to hit the power button, and nothing. We get nothing. I'm hopefully filming that for you, but there's nothing there. There's no power. Pull our LED back out. And just to verify, yeah, no power, no reset. So we're going to check voltages. And I'm just checking to make sure that there are voltages going through. I'm not sure if the voltages are correct at this point, but if there's voltage getting across the board, then that will tell me something. So unlike my 64 testing, I don't feel anything getting warm on here. I'm getting 27 volts on my 25 volt there. I guess that's okay. All right, so I don't notice anything wrong. I don't see anything wrong. I don't know what I'm looking for. However, what I might do in this situation is just check some of the random chips here. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do a continuity check. I'll put this on ground. Oh, we'll put this on ground. Okay. Switch seems to be working. Reset switch seems to be working. Fair enough. So I think the next step would be to give this board a thorough clean and look at it a little closer and see what I can find. So I was working on cleaning the board, and I had seen a video from Adrian's Digital Basement where he had an issue with a C128, and it ended up being just gunk inside the power switch. So, following in his footsteps, I sprayed some deoxit on this power supply or this power switch, and we now have power, and the Commodore is booting up into basic version 7. So, I'm going to put everything back together once I get the case cleaned and the keyboard all set up, and we'll continue running tests.
So I went through the same process I did on the Commodore 64 to clean each one of the key switches. I'm not going to bore you with the details on that, but basically it involves rubbing the key switches across a piece of paper to clean off the contacts. I gently wiped down the keyboard itself, and I reassembled everything. I also did take the time to retrobrite both the top and bottom and all of the keys for about 2 to 3 days in a retrobriting solution. Initially, I was not terribly happy with the results, but after talking to some people in my local vintage computer club, I'm finding out that a lot of the luck you can have with the retrobriting process can have a lot to do with the material that you're working with. And as I previously warned you about hydrogen peroxide, especially concentrated hydrogen peroxide, it's nothing to play with. Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of what happened to me. I got a slight chemical burn from hydrogen peroxide. Thankfully, it wasn't anything too severe. My fingertips went a little white and got tingly for a while. And I'm relatively sure that on 3 of my fingers, I didn't have fingerprints for a couple of days. But it cleared up rather quickly, and I'm completely fine. So overall, I'm satisfied with this repair process. I'd been putting off working on the Commodore 128 for quite some time because, well, I had a pile of Commodore 64s and I wanted to go through them first, but the Commodore 128 just kept calling my name. And finally, I just got up the nerve to look at it and you see the results. So, as I said before, I wasn't initially happy with the retro brighting, and it's really hard to show you in this light, but it's come out looking a lot better than when I started. And I think that's a great improvement. Let me know what you think about the before and after in the comments down below. As always, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I have making it. My name is Bryant. This is Reviews for Nerds. Have a great day.